She hadn't spoken a single word in 2 years, not since the day they buried her father. But the night a stranger rode out of a Montana blizzard and nearly died on their floor, something cracked open in Clementine Bellamy that silence couldn't hold anymore. She gave him the one thing she'd never let anyone else touch, her father's carved wooden bird. And nobody in that cabin could explain why, not even her. This channel tells the stories of the West that go deeper than gunfights and gold. The love between mothers and children, the wounds that silence leaves behind, and the rare, unexpected grace of strangers who arrive exactly when they're needed most. What this story teaches: sometimes healing doesn't start with words. Sometimes it starts with a child handing a broken man the most precious thing she owns. Subscribe if this kind of story speaks to something in you. Leave a comment, share it forward, and stay, because the best is always yet to come. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. Thank you for being part of our community.
Now back to that blizzard. The horse came first, a ghost out of the snow, screaming. Blood was frozen slick on the saddle, and it was dragging a man by his boot. Josie didn't even grab her shoes. She just took her husband's rifle and threw the cabin door open to 2 feet of Montana powder. The stranger was a limp bundle of rags, his face scraped raw on the ice. Inside, her 5 children watched, their faces pale against the window glass. Her youngest had been crying for 3 whole days with a fever. And now this. A half-dead man bleeding out in the worst storm Elorn Creek had seen in 20 years. Josie took her knife and sliced through the leather stirrup. The man dropped like a sack of feed. "Mama." It was Hattie, her 13-year-old, standing there with a big kitchen knife. "What are we going to do?" Josie just said, "Get Ezra." The boy appeared, and Josie knelt in the snow, pressing her fingers against the stranger's neck. There was a pulse, weak as a whisper, but it was there. She saw his face then, a dark beard dusted with silver, and a nasty gash over his eye. "Mister," she said, shaking him, "can you hear me?" His lips moved. She had to lean right down to hear him. "The horse," he rasped. "Don't let my horse die." Josie sat back on her heels, a man bleeding out in a blizzard, and his first thought is for his horse. Her own husband would have said the exact same fool thing. "I ain't helping you drag him inside," Ezra said. He was 11 with his daddy's big hunting knife tucked in his belt. "Papa told us not to trust strangers." "Your papa also said a Bellamy doesn't let a soul die on their doorstep if they can help it." "This is different," the boy insisted. "Papa ain't here to protect us if he's a bad one." The truth in his words stung her. She saw her boy trying so hard to be the man of the house, scared half to death but hiding it behind a stubborn jaw. "Ezra James," she said, her voice steady. "I've got a rifle. You have that knife. We are not helpless. Now grab his arm before he freezes solid." The boy did as he was told, but his hand never once left the handle of that knife. They hauled the man inside, laying him near the fire. Josie barred the door and turned to see her children ready for a fight. Hattie stood guard over the little ones. Clementine, who hadn't spoken a word since the funeral, just watched with her big, knowing eyes. And from the crib, baby Birdie's cries were getting weaker, the fever just burning her up. "He's bleeding real bad, Mama," Hattie said. Josie ripped back his coat. The cut was deep, running from his ribs clean down to his hip. She'd stitched up leather and canvas her whole life, and a wound on her husband once. "I need my sewing kit," she said, "the good needle, and boil some thread." The stranger woke with a gasp when she cleaned the wound with whiskey, his hand clamping down on her wrist like a trap. "Easy now," Josie told him. "I'm not going to hurt you." He let go fast. "Sorry, ma'am," he rasped. Bad habit. Where am I? Bellamy Place. Looks like your horse dragged you down from the ridge trail. She found you, he said, a hint of a smile in his voice. Good girl. She got a name? Josie asked. Silas. Silas Thorne. Well, Silas Thorne, I'm about to stitch you up. Try not to grab me again. And he didn't. The man just laid there, quiet, taking the pain like it was an old friend. He stared at the ceiling, breathing slow and steady while she worked. He didn't make a sound. 19 stitches, she said, tying it off. It'll hold. It's good work, he said, looking down at her sewing. Better than most, Field. He stopped himself, but Josie caught it. Better than most what? Nothing, ma'am. Just thank you. Just then, a terrible wet cough rattled from the crib. It was Bertie. The sound made the whole cabin go silent and cold. Josie was up in a second, scooping the baby into her arms, feeling the awful heat coming off her little body. Fever won't break, Hattie whispered beside her. I've tried everything. Josie already knew the town doctor was no help, drunk in his own bed. She held Bertie tight, listening to her breath, a sound like tearing paper. She'd heard that sound before, the night her husband's mother passed. It was the sound of someone running out of time. How old is she? The stranger, Silas, asked from the floor. That's none of your concern, Josie snapped. Ma'am, how old? His voice was sharp now. 3. She's 3 years old. Silas closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, the man was different. The pain was gone, replaced by a fire. Her lungs are filling up, he said, his voice hard with certainty. I can hear it. If you don't get that fluid out, she won't make it to morning. How would you know that? Josie demanded. Because I've heard that sound before. I know when someone is drowning from the inside out. Right now, all that matters is that I can help your little girl. Ezra stepped right between Silas and the crib. Mama, no, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We don't know him. Papa trusted a man who got him killed. I'm not going to make the same mistake. Silas looked straight at the boy. He didn't argue or get mad. He just said, Son, you're right. You have no reason to trust me. Your daddy taught you to protect this family, and you're doing a fine job. He paused, letting his words sink in. But I'm asking you to listen. Just listen to your sister's breathing, and then you decide. The only sound in the room was that awful wet rattle from the crib, each breath harder than the last. Ezra stood there, his knuckles white on the handle of his knife. He listened, his young face tight with a terrible choice. Finally, he looked at Silas, his eyes full of fear, but also a sliver of hope. Tell me what to do, Ezra said, his voice low. But if you hurt her, I swear. Silas nodded. If I hurt her, you can use that knife on me. It's a fair deal. And just like that, they got to work. Silas couldn't stand, so he gave orders from the floor, his voice calm and sure. Hattie put every pot they had on to boil. Ezra, with his quick hands, built a tent of blankets over the crib. And Josie crushed mint and sage, the sharp, clean smell fighting back against the scent of sickness. More steam, Silas commanded. We need it thick. For the next hour, she needs to breathe nothing but that hot, wet air. She's just so little, Hattie whispered, her hands trembling as she fixed the blanket tent. Too little for all this. Little ain't the same as weak, Silas said. I've seen babies fight through things that'd put a grown man in the ground. They just don't know they're supposed to quit. Just then, Clementine was at Josie's side, appearing from nowhere. She held out a little bunch of dried wild thyme. Clem, Josie breathed. The girl pointed to a loose board under the pantry shelf, her mother's secret spot for her best herbs. Good girl, Josie said, her voice thick. She dropped the thyme into the steam, and the air grew rich. Bertie's next breath came just a little bit easier. Honey, Silas said. Warm honey with a drop of mint water. It'll soothe her throat. We're almost out of honey, Hattie worried. Use it, Silas said, meeting her eyes. You can't save honey and lose a sister. Hattie snatched the jar. They fought through the night. Josie carefully spooned honey water onto Bertie's dry lips. Ezra kept the fire blazing hot, his young face set and serious. Sam had fallen asleep on the floor, his head resting on the stranger's arm, a perfect picture of a child's trust. Clementine sat near the crib, her small hand resting on Bertie's foot inside the tent. Twice Bertie stopped breathing. The first time felt like a lifetime. Josie's own heart stopped. Silas, calm as a river, said, "Turn her on her side." Josie did it without thinking. Bertie coughed, gasped, and then let out a scream. It was the most beautiful sound Josie had ever heard. The second time was near 3 in the morning, and it lasted longer. Josie froze, holding her baby. "Pat her back," Silas ordered. "Between the shoulder blades, be firm." "I might hurt her." "You'll save her. Do it now, Josie." He used her name. She hit Bertie's back, firm like he said. The baby coughed up something awful and took a deep, shuddering breath. Dawn finally came, gray and slow. Bertie was breathing steady. The fever was down. She slept on Josie's chest, her tiny fist tangled in her mama's hair. Silas had passed out hours ago, his face pale and fresh blood soaking the bandage on his side. He had spent the night saving her baby instead of saving himself. Josie stared at him. This man who told her to use all the honey, who knew what to do for a choking child, who had called her by name and steadied her hands when her whole world was shaking. "Mama?" Hattie asked, her eyes shadowed. "Who is he?" "I don't know." "Are you going to find out when he wakes up?" "Yes." Hattie was quiet a moment. "He saved her, Mama. Whatever else he is, he saved Bertie." "I know," Josie said. "So what do we do?" Josie looked at her sleeping daughter, then at the stranger on her floor. "We wait, we watch, and we keep the rifle loaded." While the others slept, Ezra was awake. He stood over the stranger's saddlebags, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He had been watching those bags all night. He opened the first one, some clothes, bullets, and a tin of coffee. Nothing. He opened the second. His fingers found a folded piece of heavy paper. It looked official. He unfolded it by the lamplight. There were words printed in bold black letters above a drawing of a man's face. It was the face of the man sleeping just a few feet away. Wanted. Silas Thorne. For desertion and cowardice. A $500 reward. Ezra's hand went to his own knife. His breath came quick. He looked at his sleeping mother holding Bertie close. He looked at Sam curled up against a wanted man. He folded the poster, tucked it deep in his pocket, and sat down in front of the door. He put his knife across his knees and waited for the stranger to wake up. Silas woke up feeling eyes on him. He opened his and saw Ezra Bellamy, sitting with a knife and a hard look on his face. "Morning," Silas said. Ezra didn't move a muscle. "You move slow when you get up. That's good. Means you're hurt worse than you let on. Means I can get to Mama before you can get to anyone." Silas looked at the boy. The grip on the knife was all wrong, but he was blocking the door. Smart kid. "That poster don't tell the whole story," Silas said quietly. "It never does." He told Ezra about a captain who stole army supplies and got caught. To save his own skin, he needed someone to blame. That was me. He made up the cowardice charge, so no one would believe my side of the story. He explained that he ran so the army would leave his wife, Catherine, and their little girl, Sarah, alone. His voice went hollow. "Diphtheria took 'em both the next winter. I was hiding out miles away while my family died." The wall. He had a clear view of everyone in the cabin. Whoever taught this boy about tactical positions had done a fine job. "You are a smart kid," Silas said. "Did your papa teach you to set up camp like that?" "Do not talk about my papa." "Fair enough. I found something in your saddlebags." Those words hit Silas harder than any punch. He knew exactly what it was. He had carried that poster for 3 years, a constant reminder of who the world thought he was. He should have tossed it in a fire ages ago. I figured somebody would find it sooner or later, Silas admitted. Desertion and cowardice. Ezra's voice was steady, but Silas heard the tremor just beneath the surface. $500. That is more money than my papa earned in 2 whole years of cutting timber. It is. So, you are a yellow belly who ran from a fight. That is what this paper says. And you came into our home. You put your hands on my baby sister. You told my mama what to do, and she did it because she was scared, and you sounded like you knew what you were about. Ezra's jaw was tight. What kind of man does that? What kind of man sneaks into a family's house pretending to be good when he has got that tucked away in his gear? Silas pushed himself up, his back against the fireplace stones. The stitches in his side screamed a pain like a hot knife, but he refused to let it show. This boy deserved to be looked in the eye by a man sitting up straight. The kind of man who never planned on being here, Silas said. The kind whose horse found your barn during a whiteout blizzard. I did not choose this, son, but I am not sorry it happened. Your sister is drawing breath this morning, and she was not going to last the night without some help. Do not call me son. Would not think of it. Ezra dug into his pocket, pulling out the wanted poster and unfolding it slow and deliberate. I am going to show this to my mama, and then you are leaving. Storm or no storm, stitches or not, you are gone. That is your mama's call to make, not yours. Everything in this family is my call now. The boy's voice cracked just a little on that last word. It was just enough to show the fear and exhaustion hiding under all that tough talk. Somebody has got to make the calls. Somebody has got to keep us safe. And it will not be some stranger with a wanted poster in his bags and his blood on my mama's floor. Ezra, Josie's voice came from behind him. She was in the doorway to the other room with Birdie asleep on her shoulder. Her face was calm, like a woman who had heard it all and was figuring out what to do. Ezra held out the poster. Mama, look at this. Josie walked across the room and took the paper from him. She read it over twice. Silas saw the moment it clicked, the way her eyes narrowed just a bit. Her free hand pressed a little tighter on Birdie's back. She took one tiny step, putting herself between him and the crib. Desertion, she read out loud. Cowardice in the face of the enemy. Yes, ma'am. Is it true? The desertion part is, Silas met her gaze. I left my unit. I walked away from my post while we were falling back. The cowardice part is a lie made up by a man who needed someone to blame for his own mistakes. But I cannot prove that to you, standing here in your cabin with a hole in my side and my face on a poster. Then why in the world should I believe you? You should not. Not just based on what I say. Talk is cheap. He glanced toward the back room where he could still hear Birdie breathing. It was still rough, but it was steady. She was alive. But you heard your daughter breathing last night. And you heard me tell you what to do, and it worked. A coward does not learn the things I know. A coward runs from folks who are hurting. He does not run toward them. Josie stood there quiet for a long time. It was long enough for Sam to wake up, rub his eyes, and say, Mama, I'm hungry. It was long enough for Hattie to start moving around the kitchen like she did every morning, getting the fire going and reaching for the oats. Long enough for Clementine to stretch out by the crib and walk to the window, pressing her hand against the cold glass. You have got 2 days, Josie finally said, until this storm passes and you are well enough to ride. You will not touch my children. You will not go through our belongings. You will sleep right here where I can see you. And if I find out you have lied about a single thing, Ezra is not the one you will have to worry about. Understood. Mama, Ezra started to object. I heard you, Ezra. I heard every single word, and I am proud of you for finding that poster. I am proud of you for standing watch all night long. But I am your mother, and this is my house. I will make this decision." Ezra's face showed about 6 different feelings in 2 seconds. Then he stood up, shoved his knife back into his belt, and walked right out into the snow without even grabbing his coat. "He is angry," Silas said. "He has been angry for 2 years. That boy has been carrying this whole family on his shoulders since the day we put his father in the ground, and he is about to break from the weight of it. He just will not let anybody see it." Josie shifted Birdie to her other shoulder. "Do not mistake my choice for trust, Mr. Thorne. I am letting you stay because my baby girl needs whatever it is you know about keeping her breathing. The second she does not need you anymore, you are gone." "I would not expect anything less." Hattie put a bowl of oatmeal on the table. Then she turned and set a second bowl on the floor next to Silas. Not on the table, but on the floor. The message was loud and clear. "Thank you," Silas said. "Do not thank me." Hattie's eyes were cool and serious, looking a decade older than she was. "I saw what you did for Birdie last night, and I will not pretend I'm not grateful. But being grateful and trusting someone are 2 different things, and I learned that lesson the hard way." "From your father?" "From the man who promised my father that logging job was safe." She turned back to the stove. "Papa believed him, and now Papa is gone. Do you understand me, Mr. Thorne?" "Perfectly." The morning went by with a whole lot of space between everyone. Josie took care of Birdie while Silas coached her from his spot on the floor. "More steam, a little less honey this time. Keep her sitting up as much as you can. Watch for her fever to climb back up around noon." They spoke to each other carefully like they were handling dynamite. They were precise and never said more than they had to. Sam, being a 6-year-old, was the one who broke the silence. He walked right up to Silas with a bowl of melted snow, holding it out with both hands. "This is for your face," Sam said. "You have got cuts all over it. Mama says you have to clean cuts or they get infected." "Sam, you leave him be," Hattie called out. "But his face is all messed up. He is going to scare Birdie when she wakes up." Silas took the bowl. "Much obliged, Sam. That is mighty thoughtful of you. Mama says I am the thoughtful one. Ezra is the tough one. Hattie is the smart one. Clem is the quiet one. Birdie is the little one. And I am the thoughtful one." Sam sat down on the floor, crossing his legs. "What are you?" "Mostly, I am the injured one." "No, I mean, what are you in your family? Everybody has got a thing." Silas dipped a cloth in the cold water and dabbed at the cuts on his face. The sting helped ground him, pulling him back from a place that Sam's question was getting dangerously close to. "I was the oldest. I had a sister named Ruth, 3 years younger than me. She was the stubborn one." "Where is she now?" "Ohio, last I heard." "That is a long way from Montana. Do you not miss her?" "Every single day." "Then why do you not go and see her?" Silas opened his mouth, then shut it again. From the kitchen, he heard Josie's hand stop moving on the counter. She was listening. They were all listening. Even Hattie, who had stopped stirring the pot and stood with her back to him, her shoulders tense and alert. "Because sometimes a person makes choices that take them so far away from home they cannot find their way back," Silas said, "even when they want." Young Sam piped up, "You said you just walk or ride a horse, but Mama says every road runs both ways." Silas smiled a little. "Your mama sounds like a real wise woman." "She's the best mama in all of Montana," Sam said with pride. "She can shoot a rabbit from 50 yards out and her biscuits don't taste like gravel. Papa always said those were the 2 most important things." Suddenly the boy looked at Silas, his eyes full of a serious question. "Mr. Silas, that poster Ezra found, Mama said desertion means you ran away from the army." "That's right, son. Did you run 'cause you were scared?" Silas met his gaze. "No." "Then why'd you run?" "Because staying meant I'd have to watch good people die, when they didn't have to." Sam chewed on that thought with the mighty seriousness that only a 6-year-old can have. Well, that sounds like the very opposite of a coward to me. And with that, he marched out into the snow. Josie let out a long, slow breath. She knelt by Silas to check on the baby, Birdie, and he could smell the faint scent of wood smoke in her hair. "He asks too many questions," she said, her voice low. "He asks the right ones," Silas replied. "Most grown-ups don't have that kind of nerve. Maybe not knowing any better is where courage gets its start." She looked at him then, truly looked at him for the first time since she saw that poster. "You said you know what it sounds like when someone's drowning from the inside. That's not how a trapper talks." "No, ma'am. I need to know, plain and simple. Are my children safe with you in this cabin?" "Safer with me than without me, I reckon. At least until that baby's lungs are clear." "That is not what I asked. I have never in my entire life harmed a child. And I would die right here before I let anything happen to yours. That's the truest thing I know how to say." Josie stood without another word. She didn't thank him. She didn't tell him she believed him. She just went back to the kitchen to heat more water. But she left her rifle leaning against the far wall instead of right by her side. Silas knew that was as close to trust as a woman like her could give. Later that afternoon, Ezra came in, his arms loaded with enough firewood for 2 days. He'd been out chopping in the cold since morning without any gloves. His hands were red and cracked, and he wouldn't look at anybody as he dropped the wood. "Your hands," Silas said quietly. "I've got a salve for that." "I don't need a thing from you," Ezra muttered. "Suit yourself," Silas said. "But frostbitten fingers don't just heal up, and a family that needs a boy who can fix things can't afford for him to lose the feeling in his hands." Ezra's jaw was tight. He stared into the fire, then stood up, walked over to Silas, and held out his hands without a word. Silas gently checked the boy's hands, pressing the fingertips to check the blood flow. "It's not permanent, but you need to get some tallow on these tonight and wrap them up tight. And wear gloves next time." "Gloves have a hole in 'em," Ezra mumbled. "Well, I can fix that," Hattie called from the kitchen. She brought over a jar of tallow. "You show me how to wrap them proper, and I'll do it next time." Silas showed her, and Hattie watched with sharp focus, her hands mimicking his motions. "You're good at this," he told her. "I'm good at what it takes to keep my family alive," she said, finishing the wrap. "Mama can't do it all. That's a heavy burden for a 13-year-old. "Didn't ask for your opinion on my burdens, Mr. Thorne." "No, ma'am," Silas said softly. "You surely did not." Clementine had been watching from her place by the window. She hadn't said a thing. Silas was starting to understand that she never did. The girl moved to a shelf, took down a pair of worn leather gloves with a tear in the thumb, and set them down beside Silas. Then she went right back to her window. "That's the most she's talked to anyone outside the family in 2 years," Hattie said quietly. "She stopped talking the day Papa died." Silas picked up the gloves. They were good gloves, a father's gloves, brought to him by a daughter who couldn't speak her meaning, but found a way to show it. "I'll fix these tonight," he said. No one answered, but no one argued. And right then, Silas felt something change in that little cabin. It wasn't trust, not yet. But a door that had been barred and bolted was now just closed, and a closed door can always be opened. That evening, Josie brought Silas clean water and fresh bandages. As she changed his dressing, her face was close enough for him to see the deep exhaustion she hid from her children. "Birdie's breathing easier," she said. "She'll need the steam for a few more days." "Then I guess I'm not leaving in 2 days after all." "Guess not," she replied, tying off the bandage. She sat back, her gaze steady. "I lost my husband because of a man's lies. A foreman swore the timber was safe, and Robert, my Robert, he believed him. I don't have that luxury anymore. I have 5 children, 40 acres, and a whole town that thinks I should sell this land before winter starves us out." She looked straight at him. "They might not be wrong." My Robert built this place with his own 2 hands. He is resting now on that ridge yonder. My babies took their first breath right here in this room. I am not going anywhere. The name is Virgil Crane. He owns half this valley, and he has been after our land since before Robert passed. Our creek is the only one that does not freeze over in the winter. He offered to buy us out 3 times. The last time, he was not so polite. He sent his boys to pull up our fences, claiming 20 acres of our land was his. I took the deed to Judge Puit, and he backed Crane off for now. But a man like that always tries again. Silas knew all about men like Crane who thought money made them right. "How many men does he have?" he asked. 8 or 10, depending on the season. "And you?" "I got a boy of 11 with a knife and a girl of 13 with a recipe book. I have got a rifle, and I do not miss. 1 rifle against 10 men. I did not say it was a plan, Mr. Thorne. I said I was not leaving." Silas saw the boy, Ezra, listening from his post by the door. He was not just guarding, he was learning. "Your boy is listening," Silas said softly. "My boy is always listening." Josie wiped her hands on her apron. "Get some rest, Mr. Thorne. Bertie needs another treatment before dawn." She paused at her bedroom door. "You asked if my children were safe with you here. I noticed you never did say what you are running from." "No, ma'am, I surely did not. When you are ready to tell that story, I will be ready to hear it. But do not you wait too long. Secrets have a bad habit of coming out at the worst time." She closed the door, leaving Silas with the sound of the storm and the steady breathing of the little girl he had somehow managed to save. He pulled a bundle of letters from his saddlebag, all of them from his sister Ruth, all of them unopened. An uneasy quiet settled in the cabin, something like trust where none of it should have been. 4 days later, the storm still howling, little Bertie sat up all on her own and gave her mama's braid a good hard pull. The sound Josie made, half a laugh and half a sob, got everyone on their feet. "She is hungry," Hattie cried, already getting the broth. "Mama, she is really hungry." "I see it." Josie's voice trembled, but her hands were steady as she lifted the child. Bertie fussed and grabbed at the air, full of life. The rattle in her chest was all but gone. Her eyes were bright and clear and mad as a wet hen about being cooped up for so long. Sam ran over, pressing his face to her leg. "She is better, Mr. Silas." "Your mama fixed her," Silas said, propped up against the fireplace. "I just talked her through it." "That is not true," Hattie said, handing over some broth. "And everyone in this room knows it." Ezra kept his seat by the door, still whittling that piece of wood down to nothing. He had not let his guard down for a minute, but Silas saw his eyes follow Bertie, watching his baby sister take hold of the world again. "Ezra," Josie said, "come hold your sister. I am busy. You are making sawdust. Now come hold this baby." He took her with a practiced gentleness. Bertie grabbed his ear and yanked. His mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile they had seen. "Ow! Quit it, Bird!" "Bah!" Bertie chirped. "That is not my name." "She is saying Ezra," Sam declared. "She is just saying nonsense." Silas watched them, and something he had kept locked away for 6 long years cracked right open in his chest. The simple sound of family. He thought of his Sarah, who was about Bertie's age when she had called him Cius because she could not get the L out. Mr. Thorne. Hattie stood over him with a clean bandage. "Time to change this. Mama says I ought to learn, since I will be doing it after you leave." The words were plain, a reminder this was not permanent. "Pull the old one off slow," Silas told her. She worked with a steady hand, peeling back the cloth. She studied the wound without flinching. "It is closing up clean," she said. "Your mama's stitching," Silas replied. "Told you she had good hands. She has got good everything. She just does not hear it enough." Hattie started wrapping the fresh bandage. "Can I ask you something? The poster says cowardice. Ezra says that means you ran from a fight. But when Bertie could not breathe, you sounded calmer than anyone I have ever heard. Cowards do not sound like that. So either that poster is lying, or I do not know what a coward is." "The poster is not wrong about what I did," Silas said. I left my post in the middle of a battle. But why? Silas was quiet for a long moment, feeling Josie listening from the kitchen. There were families stuck on the far side of a bridge, women and children. My commanding officer told us to leave them behind. He said the mission was more important. And you went back for them. I went back. Did they make it? Every last one. And the Army punished you for it. The Army needed someone to blame when things went south. A surgeon who broke rank to save civilians was an easy choice. A surgeon. So you are a doctor. Mama figured as much. She watched you with Birdie, trying to understand how a stranger knew more than our own Dr. Finch. Dr. Finch was a good man once, I reckon. Liquor can eat away at a man, slow-like, until there is nothing left to stand on. That is a kind way of saying he is useless. It is an honest way of saying he is hurting. Hattie looked at him for a long time. You know what I think, Mr. Thorne. I think you see something broken, and you just cannot stop yourself from trying to fix it. And I will bet that is what got you in trouble in the first place. On the 5th day, the storm finally broke. A sliver of blue sky opened up over the mountains. The whole world was buried in white, but the fight had gone out of the wind. The trail to town ought to be clear by tomorrow, Josie said. Silas knew the time had come. There's something I need to tell you, he said. Before that trail opens up. Josie just sat at the table and waited. You know about the poster. You know I left my unit. What you don't know is why. He took a deep breath, feeling the pull on his stitches. There was a colonel named James Harrison. At Willow Creek, when the enemy line broke through, he panicked. He ordered a full retreat. He told us to abandon the civilian families who were hiding near the bridge. And you disobeyed, Josie said, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, ma'am. I went back across that bridge with bullets flying everywhere. I loaded those families, 12 people, onto wagons, and I got them to safety, to more than anything. By the time I got to our fallback point, Harrison had already filed his report. He said I ran away under fire. He said my cowardice caused the whole retreat. He needed a scapegoat, and a field surgeon who ignored a direct order was mighty convenient. Could you not tell your side of the story? To who? Harrison had the rank, the friends in high places, and the official paperwork. All I had was the word of a dozen scared civilians who scattered as soon as they were safe. There was no trial, no hearing. There was just a warrant, a poster, and a price on my head. Josie's hands were flat on the table, as still as stone. And this Harrison, what happened to him? Last I heard, he is a congressman now, building a big reputation on a war record that is mostly made up. So the coward who left those families to die is sitting in Washington, D.C. pretending to be a hero, while the man who saved them is on my floor with a hole in his side. That pretty much sums it up. She was quiet. Silas could hear Birdie making happy noises in the back room. He heard Sam asking Hattie what was for supper and the fire crackling in the stove. They were normal, safe sounds. He had almost forgotten what they felt like. I had a daughter, he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Her name was Sarah. She was 4. My wife's name was Catherine. After the warrant, I ran. I told myself I was keeping them safe by staying away. Josie's breath hitched. I could have saved them, Silas said, the words heavy with old pain. That's what I carry. Not the war, not that poster. I had the skill to save my own family, and I wasn't there. I was too busy hiding from a lie. Silas, he said, correcting her. My name is Silas, and you asked if your children are safe with me. The truth is, I'm a man who let his family die because he was protecting himself. That's a whole lot worse than anything on that poster. No, Josie's voice cut through the quiet. No, it isn't. You didn't let them die. A disease did that, and some crooked officer stole your life and your chance to be where you belonged. You're carrying guilt that ain't even yours to carry, and I won't sit here and watch you drown in it. Silas just stared at her. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you spent all night on my floor with a hole in your side, talking my baby back to life. Oh, worst night of her life. You showed my girl how to bind up frozen hands. You stood your ground when my boy pulled a knife. And you mended my late husband's gloves for a little girl who ain't said a word in 2 years just because she asked with her eyes. Josie's own eyes were fiery. You call yourself a coward. Do not you dare say that to me. The cabin was quiet for a good while. Just the sound of the fire and the sleeping children. Mama! Clementine was standing in the doorway, having heard it all. Josie turned. What is it, baby? Clementine walked right up to Silas, her dark eyes sizing him up. He felt the pure weight of her stare. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a little wooden bird, worn smooth from being held for years. Without a word, she put it right in his hand. Then she just walked back to her spot by the window. That was her papa's, Hattie whispered from across the room. He made it for her. Nobody's touched it since he passed. Silas stared at the little bird, feeling a heaviness deep inside him, in that place he kept locked up tight. Thank you, Clem, he said quietly. She did not turn, just pressed her hand flat against the window pane. Her way of showing she was feeling something big. 2 days later, the trail thawed, and Trouble rode in, looking mighty pleased with itself. Josie spotted them first. 2 men on fine horses, moving like they owned the whole valley. She knew the man in the lead. Crane, she said, the name tasting like ash. Silas was already standing, sore but ready. Josie grabbed the rifle. Hattie, get the children in the back. But Mama, take them. Hattie did as she was told, herding the little ones, including a stiff-backed Clementine. But Ezra stood his ground. I'm staying, he declared. Josie saw the deep fear under all his boyish anger. All right, but you get behind me and keep your mouth shut. Virgil Crane approached the porch like he was king of the mountain. He was a silver-haired man with a friendly face but cold, calculating eyes. With him was a beefy younger fella wearing a deputy's badge. Mrs. Bellamy, Crane said, tipping his hat. Good to see the storm did not get you. The town was concerned. We did just fine. So I see. Crane's gaze slid past her to Silas. Did not realize you had guests. Just a traveler, caught in the weather. He is leaving soon. Crane swung down from his horse. Virgil Crane, my ranch is just south of this place. And you are just passing through, you say? Silas replied, That is funny. Most folks just passing through usually ain't asked for a name. Mr. Crane's smile got real thin. His deputy shifted in the saddle, his hand resting on his pistol grip, a gesture we were all meant to see. Mrs. Bellamy, I'm here to make you an offer, Crane said, pulling a paper from his coat. A fair one, considering. $300 for this place, all 40 acres. That's 50 more than my last offer. We both know this land ain't worth much without a man to run it. This land is worth what I say it is, Mr. Crane, and it's not for sale. Ma'am, be sensible. You have 5 kids, no husband, and a winter that nearly took your youngest. How long till the next storm takes one you can't get back? You will not use my children to frighten me. I'm not trying to frighten you, I'm trying to help you. A woman in your position. A woman in my position built this home with her husband, buried him on that hill, and kept 5 children alive through the worst winter this territory's ever seen. Josie's voice stayed low, but it got sharp enough to cut. I don't need your help, your money, or your thoughts on what I can or cannot do. The kindness fell right off Crane's face. Underneath was a cold, patient man who always got his way and was just deciding how much trouble this was gonna be. The offer stands, he said. But you should know the territorial surveyor is coming in the spring. There's some real questions about property lines in this valley. A woman all on her own without money for a lawyer might find herself on the short end when those questions get answered. Are you threatening me, Mr. Crane? No, ma'am. I'm informing you. There's a difference. He got on his horse, giving Silas one last look. And I'd be mighty careful about the company you keep. This territory can be hard on folks who take in strangers with things to hide. They watched him ride off. Ezra's hand had been gripping his knife the whole time. "He knows," the boy said, his voice tight. "About the poster. About Mr. Thorne." "He doesn't know a thing yet," Josie answered. "But he'll make it his business to find out." Silas stood in the doorway, watching Crane disappear into the snow. He knew that type of man all too well. They wrap their dirty deeds in the law and call their thieving a gift. "I should go," Silas said quietly, "before I make things worse for you." Josie turned to him, her face showing the deep weariness of a woman who'd fought alone for too long. "Are you fixin' to run again, Silas Thorne?" "I'm fixin' to keep my troubles from finding your family." "My family's been feeding your troubles for a week now, after you saved my daughter's life. It's a little late to keep us out of it." She held up a hand. "Don't you say my name all gentle-like and then tell me you're leaving. I've had one man leave me, and he didn't have a choice. If you're gonna go, then go. But don't you dare pretend it's for my sake." Ezra looked from his mother to Silas, and something in the boy's hard face seemed to shift. "He's right, Mama," Ezra said. "If Crane finds out about that poster, he'll have the law here in a day. They'll drag Mr. Thorne out of here." "I know that," she said. "So what's the plan?" Josie looked at her son, then at the man by the door. She looked at the cabin her husband built, the land he died on, and the children she had to protect. "The plan is, we stop running. All of us." She set the rifle by the door where it belonged. "The plan is, we figure out how to fight." For Josie, fightin' meant riding to town the next morning with the deed to her land. For Silas, it meant finally writing a letter he should have sent 6 years ago. And for Ezra, it meant standing in the barn, watching his mother ride off, hating that she'd left him in the care of the man whose wanted poster was in his pocket. "She trusts you," Ezra said, not turning around. "She trusts that I'll keep you all safe." "Not the same thing." "Close enough," Silas replied. The boy kicked at a clump of frozen dirt. "What happens when Crane finds out who you are?" "He'll use it," Silas said. "Like men like him always do, for leverage." "And what happens to us?" Silas heard the real question underneath. "What happens to my family because of you?" He owed the boy the truth. "If Crane turns me in, they'll send a marshal. I'll be arrested. They might threaten your mother with charges to make her sell. Crane gets the land, I get a jail cell, and your family gets nothing." "So we lose." "Not if we get ahead of him," Silas said, holding up a sealed envelope. "I wrote a letter this morning to a man I served with, Tom Morrison. He was there. He knows what really happened, and I reckon he's carried the guilt of his silence all this time. If this letter gets to him and he's the man I remember, we won't have to worry about that poster. And if he ain't, then I'll be gone before Crane can use me against her. That's a promise." "You're making a lot of promises for a wanted man. They're the only ones I have left." Ezra took the letter. "I'll take it to the post office. Mama left the mule." "Your mother told me to keep you here." "My mother told you to keep us safe," Ezra shot back. "Getting this letter sent is the safest thing I can do." The boy pulled on his father's old gloves, the ones Silas had mended by the fire, and walked to the barn without another word. Silas watched him go, feeling the first hint that maybe, just maybe, they were on the same side after all. Inside the cabin, Hattie was reading from her grandmother's recipe book, her voice a calm comfort in the quiet room. "Mama Crawford says the best bread comes from patience and warm hands," she read while stirring a pot. "Says you can't rush the rising any more than you can rush the healing." "That is one sharp woman," Silas said. "The sharpest." He figured she could look at a sickly cow and tell you its whole story. Her papa always claimed she should have been a doctor. Maybe she was just a different kind of healer. Hattie put her spoon down to face him squarely. "I heard you tell Mama about your wife and daughter." She paused. "I reckon you believe if you had been there, you could have stopped it." I know I could have, he answered, his voice low. Diphtheria is a manageable thing if you catch it in time. Simple things like steam and keeping the airways open. I had the knowledge, I just was not there to use it. Hattie was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice had a firmness that reminded him so much of Josie it hurt his chest. My papa was standing 10 feet away when that tree split. All the know-how in the world would not have saved him. Sometimes the thing that comes for you does not care what you know. She added, you carry that guilt like a stone because you think you had a choice. But guilt is a hungry beast, Mr. Thorne. Let it eat long enough and it will eat you too. Just then Sam blew in through the back door, wrestling a chicken that had flown the coop. Hattie, Margaret got out again. She tried to eat my boot. Samuel Robert Bellamy, stop naming these chickens. The boy held on with both hands, his face lit up with the pure joy of a 6-year-old battling a bird. See, she knows her name. She is just saying hello. Silas let out a real laugh, a sound so unfamiliar it surprised him. He could not remember the last time he had truly laughed. Sam looked at him triumphant. See, Mr. Silas thinks you are going to lose a finger to that hen. Put her back. As Sam hauled the squawking chicken outside, Clementine quietly crossed the room and sat near Silas. In her hand, she held her father's carved wooden bird and a bit of charcoal. She started to draw on the hearthstone with small, deliberate strokes. Soon, a cabin took shape. A horse appeared, then 5 small figures in a line. Next to them, she drew a 6th person, taller than the rest, with the same careful detail. Silas watched her without a word. Some things do not need them. Josie came back from town looking like a storm cloud. She swung off her horse, handed the reins to Hattie, and marched right past Silas into the cabin. He heard the rifle being set down and a chair scrape across the floor. He gave her 5 minutes, then followed her inside. Crane has already been to the judge, she said, staring into her coffee. He filed a formal challenge to our land. He has a surveyor coming from Helena in 2 weeks. She looked up, her eyes hard. He has also been spreading rumors that I have a drifter, a strange man living here with my children. Agnes Whitfield told me half the town thinks I have lost my senses. She said Agnes told her a respectable widow does not invite a strange man under her roof, and if she could not manage alone, the children needed a proper family. Josie's jaw was set tight. A proper family, she spat, as if ours is not good enough without a man. He is poisoning the well, Silas said, turning the whole town against you. It is working, she admitted. I saw it in their faces today. You saved your daughter's life. I let a stranger into my home. Out here for a woman on her own. That is more than enough. Just then, Ezra came in, his face red from the cold. He went straight to his mother. Letter is sent. I also heard Crane's deputy, Wyatt Polk, was in the saloon talking about a reward for a deserter. He said there might be one hiding out in this valley. Josie's eyes shot to Silas. He knew. He suspects, Silas corrected her. But that will not last. We are running out of time. Josie began to pace the small kitchen. The surveyor will not be here for 2 weeks. If we can hold Crane off, we need the original survey papers to challenge him. The ones Robert filed. Where are they? The Territorial Records Office in Helena. But that is a 4-day ride in this weather. I will go, Silas said. Josie stopped pacing. You will go? The man with a wanted poster on his back is going to ride 4 days through mountain passes in the dead of winter? I am the only one who can, he said simply. You cannot leave the children, and Ezra is too young for that ride alone. Those papers are your only proof against Crane. If you are recognized, I will handle it. Right now, this land is more important than my freedom. This is about your children having a home. It is about Clementine drawing on a hearthstone that belongs to her. He stepped closer. For 6 years, I have protected nothing but myself. Let me protect something that actually matters. The little cabin fell silent. Clementine's charcoal drawing was finished. 6 figures stood together before a cabin. "You come back," Josie said, her voice firm. "You get those papers and you come back. That is the price of you going." "I will come back," he said. "I will keep that promise." He left before the sun was up. Josie had packed his saddlebags with food they could not spare and bandages they might need. As he passed Clementine, she pressed a folded piece of paper into his hand. He did not open it until he was a mile out, the horse moving slowly through the deep snow. It was her drawing, the 6 figures, the cabin, the horse, and underneath, in a child's shaky hand, were the first words she had written in 2 years. "Come home." He tucked the paper into his pocket and rode toward Helena with a fire in his chest. Back at the homestead, Ezra bolted the door and sat in his chair, knife in hand. But this time, the blade was pointed toward the door, not at the spot where Silas had slept. 3 days crawled by. Josie ran the homestead on pure grit, refusing to stop. She milked the cow, fed the chickens, and chopped wood, sitting up each night with the rifle across her lap. On the 4th morning, Crane came back. He brought 4 men with him this time. They spread out, covering the cabin. Crane swung down from his horse and walked up to the porch, a paper in his hand. "Mrs. Bellamy," he said, holding it out, "I have a court order from Judge Pwitt. It is a temporary injunction. It means you cannot work, plant, or draw water from the 20 acres we are disputing." Josie read the paper Crane handed her. Her hands were steady, but a muscle jumped in her jaw. "These 20 acres you're talking about, Mr. Crane, that's our water source. You know that." "I know the law is the law, ma'am, and the law says that land is in dispute. The law says whatever you pay the judge to say." His face didn't change a bit. "Careful, Mrs. Bellamy. Accusing a judge is a serious thing, almost as serious as hiding a fugitive from military justice." The words hit her like a physical blow. Josie felt Ezra tense up behind her. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice even. "Oh, I think you do. My man Wyatt here has been talking with the marshal's office. Seems there's a $500 reward for a fella named Silas Thorne." Crane looked right past her into the cabin. "He wouldn't still be in there, would he? There's nobody here but my children and me. Is that right?" Crane nodded to the deputy. "Wyatt, why don't you go have a look around?" "You are not coming into my home." "Ma'am," Crane said smoothly, "I have a deputy here with a badge and a good reason to believe you're harboring a wanted man. The law says he can search." Ezra stepped forward, the step out. "And I have got a rifle that says he does not." The whole yard froze. The boy was on the porch, his father's rifle aimed dead at the deputy's chest. His hands were rock steady. "Ezra," Josie whispered, "put it down." "No, Mama. They are not coming in this house. They are not touching what Papa built." The barrel did not move an inch. "I am 11 years old, and I have been the man here for 2 years. I am through with people taking from us." Crane raised a calming hand. "Son, you do not want to do this." "I am not your son." Ezra's voice was sharp. "Ezra." Josie's tone turned low and hard. "Lower that rifle. Not for them. For you. Your father raised you to be better than this, to find another way." But the rifle stayed put, Ezra's breath coming in quick bursts, desperate to protect his family. "There is another way," Josie insisted. "There is always another way to do things. Believe me." Ezra's hands trembled as he slowly lowered that rifle, inch by painstaking inch. His whole body shook with the strain of backing down when every part of him screamed to fight. Crane just smiled. "Smart kid. Now, Mrs. Bellamy, about that search, we will not be needing it." But a new voice cut through the cold air from down the trail. Everyone snapped their heads around. A man on horseback approached at a calm pace, sitting tall in the saddle. His clothes marked him as a man who was used to giving orders. Another younger man rode behind him, holding a leather case that looked mighty official. My name is Thomas Harding, the first man said as he swung down from his horse. I am an attorney, and I was hired by Mrs. Josephine Bellamy through a written request sent to my office in Helena 3 days ago. Josie just stared. She had not hired any lawyer. Harding kept talking, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man who had argued in courtrooms a lot scarier than a snowy porch. I have looked over this injunction you are trying to serve, Mr. Crane. I am ready to challenge it, because the original survey documents, which my associate here picked up from the records office yesterday, clearly show Mrs. Bellamy's property lines as filed by her late husband in 1871. There is no argument. There has never been an argument. Any more attempts to claim this land will be met with a lawsuit for harassment, fraud, and messing with the law. Crane's face turned the color of week-old snow. Who hired you? Who my client is does not concern you. But this does. Harding pulled another paper from his coat. This is a formal complaint filed with the governor's office about Judge Pruitt handing out injunctions without checking the existing records. The governor does not take kindly to judges who sign papers without reading them first. Neither does the federal court, Mr. Crane. The deputy slowly moved his hand away from his gun. Crane's men started looking at each other. The situation had changed, and every soul on that porch could feel it. This is not over, Crane growled. Actually, Mr. Crane, as far as the property goes, it is very much over. Harding folded his arms. Now, I suggest you and your men get off Mrs. Bellamy's land before I add trespassing to that complaint. Crane climbed back on his horse. He shot Josie a look that promised this was far from done, that powerful men like him did not lose to widows and lawyers for hire. But he rode off. His men followed, and the sound of their horses faded into the valley, leaving only the sound of the wind and Bertie making noise in the back room and Ezra's shaky breath as he finally let the rifle go. Josie turned to the lawyer. I did not hire you. No, ma'am, you did not. But a man named Silas Thorne stumbled into my office 4 days ago, half frozen and bleeding through his coat. He told me a woman down in Elorn Creek was about to lose her home because some rich fellow wanted her water rights. Harding reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He also asked me to give you this. Josie took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in a handwriting she knew from long talks by the fire and from the longest night of her daughter's life. She did not open it there. She waited until the lawyer was gone, until the cabin was quiet, and the children were settled. Bertie was asleep, Sam was building with kindling, Clementine was drawing on the hearthstone, Hattie was reading the recipe book, and Ezra was sitting with the rifle on his lap. But for the first time in weeks, his eyes looked less like a soldier's and more like a boy's. Under the kitchen lamp, she opened the letter and read the 3 short lines Silas Thorne had written. The documents are real. The lawyer is paid for through the spring. I'm coming back, but if I do not know that your family gave me back something I thought was gone for good, a reason to stop running. Josie folded the letter and held it tight against her chest. Mama. Ezra was watching her. Is he coming back? He says he is. Do you believe him? Josie looked right at her son. This fierce, scared, and stubborn boy had held a rifle on 4 men to protect them all. He had taken a wanted man's letter to the post office just because it was the right thing to do. He had spent 2 years building walls around his heart, and was only now starting to wonder if walls were the answer. I do, she said. Ezra gave a single nod. Then he pulled his father's old gloves from his pocket, the ones Silas had mended, and set them on the table. They were right where the stranger could find them when he came home. Outside, the Montana sky was clear for the first time in weeks, with stars burning bright and cold. And somewhere on the trail, a man who had spent 6 years running from everything was finally riding towards something. He was riding toward a cabin with a warm stove, 5 children who had changed him completely, and a woman who told him not to say her name softly, unless he truly meant it, and he meant it. Lord help him, he meant every last word. Silas finally rode up to the Bellamy place on the 8th day, not the 4th. The horse appeared first, just like she had on the night it all began, carefully picking her way through the snow. She knew where home was long before her rider did. Josie saw them from the window and set down the rifle she had been keeping by the door every single morning. She did not run out. She did not shout for the children. She just stood there in the kitchen, her hands flat on the table her Robert had built, and she took a deep breath for what felt like the first time in a week. Hattie looked up from the stove. "He is back. I can see that. You're going to go out there." "In a minute. Mama, go." Josie pulled on her coat and stepped onto the porch. Silas was getting down from his horse real slow, favoring his left side even more than when he had left. His face was thinner, and his coat had a new tear on the shoulder. But he was here, standing on his own 2 feet. And when he looked at her across that snowy yard, his eyes held something new. It was not just relief, it was certainty. "You are late," she said. "I got delayed, 4 days delayed. The kind of delay that has federal marshals and a congressman who wants the truth buried." He tied up the horse and pulled something from a saddlebag. "But I brought back more than just the lawyer." He held up a thick leather folder. "Tom Morrison, my old sergeant. He wrote back before I even got to Helena. He has been holding on to evidence of what really happened at Willow Creek for 12 years, just waiting for someone to ask. Witness statements. His own sworn testimony. All of it." Silas's hand shook just a little as he held that folder. "It is all right here, Josie. Everything I need to clear my name." Josie looked from the folder to the man. "Come on inside. You look like you're about to fall flat on your face." "I have been about to fall for 8 days. Have not hit the ground yet. Well, do not start now. I just swept in here. Sam hit him like a cannonball before he even made it through the door. The boy had been watching from the window and launched himself with all the force a 6-year-old has. You came back. You said you might not, but I said you would because you made a promise. And Mama says Bellamy's always keep their promises. And you are almost a Bellamy now since you live here." "Sam, let the man breathe," Hattie said from the kitchen. But she was smiling, really smiling for the first time since Silas had known her. It made her look like the 13-year-old girl she was supposed to be. "I do not live here," Silas said, setting Sam down easy. "I am just... If you say you are just passing through, I will hit you with this spoon," Josie said. Bertie was on a blanket by the fire, chewing on a block of wood. She looked up when Silas came in and held up both her arms. Not for Josie, not for Hattie, for him. "Bah," Bertie said. "She has been saying that all week," Hattie said. "Sam thinks it is your name." "It does not mean his name," Ezra said from his chair. But he had stood up when Silas walked in, and his knife was on the table, not in his lap. "It just means whatever babies mean when they talk. Do not go reading into it." Silas nodded at the boy. "Thank you for making sure that letter got sent. It made all the difference in the world." Ezra just shrugged, but his face softened a little. "I did not do it for you. I did it for Mama." "I know. That is what makes it count." Clementine came out from the back room. She walked right up to Silas, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out the folded drawing she had given him. She opened it up, looked at it hard, then looked up at him, asking a question with her eyes that she still did not have the words for. "Kept it close the entire time," Silas said, his voice low. Clem took her drawing and pinned it on the wall right next to her father's Bible for everyone to see. Then she went to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. "Well, I reckon you passed the test," Hattie chuckled. Later that evening, with the children asleep, Josie sat with Silas and read through all of Morrison's papers. "This is it," she said finally. "This is more than enough. Morrison agrees. He has already reached out to a federal judge in Cheyenne, a man named Worthington with a good name. And Harrison? His people know something is up. That is what held me back. 2 hired guns found my trail, same kind of men Crane uses." Josie's face hardened. "They found you?" "They did. I gave them the slip, but this is all connected, Josie. Crane's deputy, a fella named Wyatt. Polk. Morrison knew that name. Polk served with Harrison in the war. It is all one problem, Josie. Crane is just doing Harrison's dirty work, grabbing land and power for what is next. Your homestead was just in the way. Robert's homestead, she corrected, her voice thick. He chose this spot for the water, said it controlled the whole valley. He was a smart man. He was a good man, she countered. Smart men look out for themselves. Good men look out for everybody else. Her eyes met his. You are like him. And I hate it because it gets men killed. She rested her hand on his, the first time she had touched him just to touch him. Do not you die, Silas. These kids cannot take another loss. Not planning on it. Robert was not either. He turned his hand to hold hers. I am not Robert. I have spent 6 years learning how to stay alive. And now, he added, I have a reason to come back. She left her hand in his. They sat there in the quiet lamplight as the winter howled outside a cabin that was finally safe and warm. 12 days later, the fight came to them. It was a bitterly cold morning when Ezra flew through the door, pale and out of breath. Riders, Mama, 8 of them, coming hard. Silas was already moving. It is Crane, Ezra panted, and Polk and others. They are all carrying guns. Josie did not waste a second. Hattie, get the children to the root cellar, now. I am not hiding. Hattie May, you take your brothers and sisters down there and you stay put until I get you. You understand me? Hattie understood. She got a quiet, frightened Sam and a fussy Birdie, but Clementine refused to move. Clem, we have to go, Hattie pleaded. But the little girl just stood at the window, hand pressed to the glass, watching. Just then Hattie called from the window. Riders coming? Clementine walked over to the shelf, picked up her father's old carved bird, and put it in Hattie's hand instead of Silas's. She pointed to the root cellar, then to herself, and shook her head. She wants to stay, Hattie said. No, Josie said at once. But Clementine held up all 10 fingers. 10, then she pointed at Josie. 1 at Silas, 2 at Ezra, 3, and herself, 4. She's counting fighters, Ezra said, his voice husky. She's 8 years old. And she's right, Ezra insisted. We need everyone. Josie closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, she was the woman who had kept 5 children alive in the wilderness. Clem, you take the back window. You watch and you don't move. Ezra, you're with me on the porch. She looked at Silas. I'll be where I need to be. Crane rode up like a man who was sure he'd already won, with Polk on one side and a hired gun on the other. He rode into the yard, followed by 5 men who fanned out like they knew this kind of ugly business. Mrs. Bellamy, Crane called out. I'm here on the authority of the territorial marshals to search for a fugitive. Step aside and this'll all go easy. Let's see that warrant, Josie said. Crane showed her a paper signed that morning by Judge Pitt. A warrant from Judge Pitt is not worth the ink on it, and you know that. Josie did not budge. Your pet judge is being investigated by the governor. His signature means nothing. That is for the lawyers to figure out. Right now I have a piece of paper and 8 armed men. All you have is a porch. She also has me. Silas appeared in the doorway, taking his place beside Josie. And since I am the man you're looking for, you can drop this whole act. Crane's eyes fixed on him. Silas Thorne, deserter and coward. $500 on your head. Surgeon and soldier, Silas countered, holding up Morrison's leather folder. The man who saved 12 civilians while your friend Harrison ran for his life. And I have the proof. The yard fell deathly quiet. One of Crane's men, Polk, let his hand drift toward his pistol. Your papers do not change my warrant, Crane said, his voice tight. Polk, take him, Crane ordered. The man swung off his horse and started for the porch. Ezra stepped out, raising his rifle. I would not do that if I were you, the boy said. Son, you put that down before someone gets hurt. The last man who called me son on this porch regretted it. Try again, Ezra. His voice was cold. Josie put a hand on the rifle's barrel, not to lower it, but to steady him. Hold on, she whispered. From inside the cabin, a sound stopped everyone in their tracks. It was a high, clear voice, unused for so long it cracked like an old hinge. It was Clementine. "Mama!" she cried out, her voice strong after 2 years of silence. "There are more riders coming from the north. A whole lot of them." Josie spun to look out the back window while Silas moved to the side of the house. A cloud of dust and snow was rising from the trail, and through it rode at least 15 riders. Crane saw them too, and the confidence drained from his face. The lead rider broke away from the group. It was Agnes Whitfield, who ran the town's only restaurant. She sat on a draft horse that was almost too big for her, but she rode it like she had been born to the saddle. Behind her came folks Josie knew well, ranchers, the blacksmith, and even the school teacher. These were the same families who had looked the other way for years, as Crane tightened his grip on their valley. "Morning, Virgil," Agnes called, her voice carrying an authority that made Crane's entrance look cheap. "I heard you were paying the Bellamys a visit. I figured you could use the company." "This is official martial business, Agnes. It is no concern of yours." "Everything that happens in this valley is my concern. I feed half the folks in it." Agnes then looked at Josie, and in that one look an apology passed between them for weeks of gossip. "I also had a visit yesterday from a federal judge named Worthington. He had some mighty interesting things to say about you, Virgil, about land fraud and a 12-year conspiracy to silence the man standing on that porch." Crane's face went pale. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Then you will not mind waiting here for Judge Worthington. He is about an hour behind us," Agnes said with a sharp smile. We took the shortcut. We did not want to miss the show." That next hour felt like an eternity to Josie, and a single moment to Silas. Crane tried to leave twice, but the townsfolk, finding courage together, blocked his path each time. Polk gave up his badge without a fuss after the blacksmith Garrett, a man who stood 6'4" and weighed 250 pounds, suggested it was the healthier option. The hired guns disappeared into the mountains, just like hired guns do when the odds turn against them. Judge Worthington arrived on a gray mare, moving with the quiet dignity of a man who had served justice for 50 years. Beside him rode Tom Morrison, carrying a leather case filled with evidence, looking like a man who had finally laid down a terrible burden. "Silas," Morrison said, getting off his horse. They stood there, looking at each other across 12 years of silence and guilt. "I should have spoken up sooner," Morrison said quietly. "You are speaking now. That is what counts." Judge Worthington held his review right there in the yard, with the whole town as his witness. He examined the proof Morrison brought. He took statements from Silas and from 2 of Crane's own men who were suddenly eager to cooperate. He compared the real property documents to Crane's forgeries. By the middle of the afternoon, it was all over. Crane and Polk were taken into custody. Judge Pwitt's warrants were all declared void, and the name Silas Thorne, which had meant coward for 12 long years, was finally cleared. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Worthington said, carefully folding his papers, "on behalf of the territorial court, I owe you an apology. A great injustice was done to you, and the men who did it will answer for their crimes. Thank you, Your Honor. Do not thank me. You should thank the woman who kept you alive to see this day." The judge looked at Josie with pure admiration. "And the children who gave you a reason to finally stop running." After the judge was done, Agnes Whitfield approached Josie on the porch. The older woman stood where Crane had stood, but she seemed smaller now, humbled. "I said things in town," Agnes began. "Things about you, and the children, and the stranger. They were not fair, and they were not true." "No, they were not," Josie agreed. "I am sorry, Josie. My Robert would have been ashamed of me. Robert would have said that people make mistakes, and the ones who own up to them are the ones worth knowing," Josie said. She paused, then added, "He also would have said that you make the best chicken and dumplings in the territory, and that covers a lot of sins." Agnes let out a surprised, wet laugh and pulled Josie into a hug that went on for a long time. As the sun set, the townsfolk rode back down the trail, their voices carrying on the cold air, filled with the warmth of people who knew they had done something right together. Morrison stayed for supper. and Hattie made him eat 2 bowls of stew, which he declared the best he had eaten since the army. "Did your mama teach you to cook like that?" Morrison asked. "My mama taught me how to cook," Hattie corrected him. "I taught myself to cook like that." She put a 3rd bowl down in front of him. "If you want more, you say please." "Please, ma'am," he said. "That is better." After Morrison left, a new kind of quiet fell over the cabin. It was not the careful silence of strangers or the tense silence of a family in danger. It was the deep, peaceful quiet that comes only when a long and difficult fight is finally won. Together, they had made it through. The cabin was finally quiet. Bertie was sleeping peacefully in her crib, and young Sam was passed out by the fire, worn out from all the excitement, his little wooden horse still in his hand. Hattie read her mother's recipe book by the lamplight, and Clementine was at the table drawing a secret picture. Ezra stood near the door. His knife was on the table and his rifle was on the rack. He looked at Silas, a look that had been brewing for weeks. "I figure I owe you something," the boy said. Silas shook his head. "You don't owe me a thing. It's me that owes you an apology. From the moment I saw that poster, I treated you like a wanted man, just waiting for you to prove me right. You were just protecting your family. That ain't nothing to be sorry for." "Maybe," Ezra's voice went low. "But I was also just plain scared. Scared that if I trusted you and I was wrong, it would break this family in a way I couldn't fix." "You are not my papa," Ezra said, his jaw tight. "I don't want you to be. Nobody can." "I know, son. But we all need somebody." The boy's voice cracked. "I need somebody. I am 11 years old, but I have been acting like I am 40. And I am tired, Mr. Thorne. I am so tired I cannot sleep, because I am afraid if I close my eyes, something bad will happen." Silas walked over and knelt down in front of the boy, eye to eye. "You have done a man's job, Ezra. Better than most men could have. But you are a boy, and a boy deserves to sleep without fear. So here is my offer. I will watch the door every night. You sleep, and if trouble comes, I will wake you, and we will face it together. Not because you cannot do it alone, but because you should not have to." Ezra did not cry, but he leaned forward just enough to rest his forehead on Silas's shoulder. He took 3 deep breaths, then straightened up, wiping his face with his hand. "Deal," he said. Silas nodded. "Deal." Josie watched it all from the kitchen doorway, understanding she had just seen something sacred pass between them. Later, when all the children were truly asleep, Josie and Silas sat at the kitchen table. "Ruth wrote you back," Josie said, pointing toward a letter on the shelf. "I saw the new one." Silas looked at the letter. "She wants me to come on home to Ohio. Says she needs her brother." "And what did you tell her?" He looked right at her. "I told her I had found something in Montana I was not ready to leave. Something. Or some people." Josie reached across the table and took his hand, her eyes wide open, knowing just what she was doing. "Robert has been gone 2 years, she said. "And I have spent every single one of those days proving I did not need a soul. Proving I could handle it all by myself for 5 children and 40 acres. You are more than enough, Josie. You always have been." "I know," she said, her fingers tightening around his. "But being enough is not the same as being whole. My children are starting to love you, Silas. And if you leave, it will not just hurt them. It will hurt me. I have spent 2 years building walls so nothing could hurt me again. So if you stay for good. Not just passing through, for real." Silas looked at the woman who saved his life. "Josie Bellamy, I rode for 8 days through a blizzard with a hole in my side to get you help. I let your 11-year-old boy hold a knife on me for a week. I have been yours since the night you stitched me up barefoot in the snow. I was just waiting for you to believe you deserved to hear it." She stood up, came around the table, and put her hands on his face, her gaze steady and fearless. "Then stay," he smiled. Yes, ma'am. A good man can get dealt a bad hand, and a strong woman can be left to carry the whole world on her own. But this story is about finding your way home, and it proves that no matter how long the winter, spring is always on its way. She kissed him then. It was not a desperate kiss, but a slow and sure one, from a woman who had finally made her choice. From the loft, a little voice whispered loudly, "Hattie, are they kissing?" "Hush up, Sam." Silas laughed against Josie's mouth, and she laughed right back. In the corner, Clementine held up the drawing she had been working on. 6 figures stood before a cabin, but this time the tall man and the woman stood close, their hands drawn to touch. Underneath, a child's shaky handwriting spelled out 2 letters, U.S. Spring came to the Bellamy homestead the way it does in the mountains, sudden and loud. Life on the homestead found a new, steady rhythm. Josie and Silas worked the garden together, moving as naturally as breathing. Hattie took charge of the cooking, getting bolder and adding her own notes to her mother's recipe book. Ezra split wood without being asked, and slept through the night for the first time in 2 years, all because a man he trusted now sat watch by the door. As for Harrison, his day of reckoning came faster than anyone reckoned. By April, he was stripped of his office and facing a military tribunal. Newspapers across 3 territories printed Silas's name in their headlines. He was not a deserter, but the hero who had saved 12 lives and paid for another man's cowardice for 12 years. Ruth's letters came every week, stitching together the 2 halves of a family that had been broken for far too long. One evening, Josie found Silas on the ridge where Robert was buried. He was talking quietly to the wooden cross. "Just introducing myself," he said, turning to her. "Figured I owed him that." Josie came and stood with him. "What did you tell him?" "That I would take care of what he built, that his children are strong and brave and stubborn as all get out, just like their mother. That I'm not trying to replace him, just trying to be worthy of what he left behind." Josie slipped her hand into his. "He would have liked you." "You think so?" "I think he would have said you talk too much and your coffee is too strong." She squeezed his fingers. "And then he would have shaken your hand and told you, 'Welcome home.'" Below them, the cabin was alight, filled with the sounds of their family. The truth was simple, even if the road to it had been rough. A man fell from a horse in a storm. A woman chose to drag him inside instead of leaving him to the snow. 5 children decided, each in their own way, to let a stranger become family. And a homestead that had been held together by one woman's stubborn will became something stronger. It became a place where broken people could mend each other, where silence learned how to speak again, where love was not found in promises, but in stitches sewn by lamplight and bread shared at a table built by hands that were gone, but never forgotten. Silas Thorne stopped running the night Josie Bellamy opened her door. And Josie Bellamy stopped carrying the world alone the night she let him in. That was the whole of it. That was enough. That was home.